cent.
Next Leben Janko, das ist doch das.
Bist dann schlafen geworden?
Ich bin auch geschlossen.
Schlafen geworden. Alright. Und du nicht?
Nein.
Bist
Wie
geschlafen.
sind Sie gegangen?
Zum Wasser im Dorf.
Und Wasser. Schön kennst du.
Weißt du was? In Polen, wenn wir die Kern früher, hast du nicht also viel geschlafen?
In 38.
Wir fliegen nach hinten, mit der Nacht.
Die Nazi damals gegeben. Die Nazi.
Ja, ich gedenke, nein, ich hatte der angeschrieben, ist also noch jeder Menge oder weißt du, war nach.
Ja.
Wie sind es gewesen?
A loose translation is, he used to take me walking very late at night in lodge. And his father said if he did that again, he was throwing out the house while I was there.
He told him in Polish.
He told him in Polish, but I got the message. And so did we. Jetzt schläft as I say. Right. So what is it you want to know? Oh, we should first identify ourselves.
Right.
We are sitting here. We're not the only ones, but we're the only ones here. Are the grandchildren of a common ancestor we have decided to designate today as the focal point. We are the grandchildren of Yehuda Leib Winograd and his wife Bracha, whose maiden name was Wengel. I have been told an astonishing thing just recently, that they married when she was 14 and he's 17. I cannot resist putting this in. And you're right. That
It was a Jade love affair.
it was
She met him at the hookah.
so anyhow, here we are.
20 minutes long.
And the descendants here, this is a special occasion because Mata, who is here, doesn't come often. He's from Munich, and he is the son of Yehuda Leib named Yaakov. Here's Jack, who lives in Denver, who is the son of Esther, a daughter of the same couple. And two of us are siblings of the same father and mother, Harold and Eleanor, whose father is remains A. So
remains.
So all of your parents were brother and sister, right?
Right. But only three parents were represented here, since Harold and I had the same parents.
That's
Okay,
right.
I want to make that. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Where's Larry, by the way?
Right, yeah, but he still fits that same description, same.
No,
father.
Different mother.
Same mother. But
Same
same
father.
father. On the Winograd side. That's right.
His chair is right there.
Elijah's.
What's supposed to be with it? What would you all like to know?
Well,
Starting with
starting with what I would like to know.
Yeah.
So,
Sie will gewollt wissen, was hat ihr getan? Vater noch Hanne. Persönlich. Du bist gewählt doch ein junger Mann. Du bist doch gewählt ein sehr junger Mann. Ja, 1936, wenn ich bin dort gewählt. Was hast du getan? Gearbeitet? Fabrik. Explain.
now can you translate what you just
He said he had a factory in 1936. The question I asked him, for example, when I was there in 1936, what did you do? He said, I had a factory. Was gewesen 21, ich bin gewollt 20. He was 21, I became 20 that year. Dit is alleen gewesen, de Eigentümer von Fabrik zu discard von zwei Schiffe, nicht Käufen. He almost forgot he says. He believes he had two partners, and he doesn't think they were related. They were not
and
friends.
what was the factory?
Oh, was ist wenn da Betriebe Teile?
Textil.
not knitting.
I remember, I was a boy, a young boy of 15, 14, 15. I used to come up to his factory and help him. He used to need some help in doing like threading needles, a special thing in textile work. Now I guess it's a different system, probably goes automatically. But in those days, we had to thread needles by hand. So he would, let's say, push in, and I would have to pull it out from the other side. There were thousands of needles.
You mean the needles along the looms?
Along the loom,
You did back
those
then?
little, the shafts that go up and down, or the needles up and down,
Is that what it's
and
in this time
then
that-
that bobbin would run, the bobbin would run back
They
and
know
forth.
them from the...
Rijden, ineens rijden. En die was, ja, je had hem geholpen. And then the bobbin,
The
was
bobbin?
running back and forth, So those needles,
aber das ist nicht spät.
dus spijtig, en je hebt nou dus je die beschouwen. We net, je hebt nou wel om zo'n 16, 17 jaar, dus zie je al geweest.
36, wie alt bist du?
16, dan gaan we weer 16 jaar.
16. Ich bin gewählt bald
Das
20.
ist später mit allein.
Und weißt du
Nou,
was?
dat is al spät.
Weißt
Een
du
week
was?
daar je spät.
Ich hab gesehen, dein Fabrik.
Ja, da muss er haben.
Keiner hat nicht gearbeitet, und es war bei Nacht, das nur genommen sehen.
Ja.
Ein größten Zimmer, one
Yeah.
large room. I saw this factory when I was there in 1936.
They were actually weaving wood.
They actually wove textiles. When I went there, they were closed for the night. There were large rows of machinery, and according to Jack, they were still handled by hand. Apparently, the bobbins.
See, I'm not going to give you a lecture
No.
on textiles, but if you saw a loom, if you notice a loom, the things that go up and down, they go through these
The
things
shuttle,
down.
shuttle.
The shuttle, yeah.
Shuttle.
And a shuttle like this has like
Shuttlecocks.
hundreds
Called-
of needles.
Yeah, called the
Needle,
shuttlecocks.
it's sort of like a wire with a little needle with an eye in the middle.
So they
And
threaded
the
them by
thread would
hand.
go down. So there were a few shuttles, different. One time this would go up, and when those would when it would go up, would bring up an amount of threads, right? And the bobbin would go through like this.
The shuttle
The
across.
shuttle
It was
across.
it was
And then there was a
mechanized.
bar where they call it, I don't know, that
Tight.
tight, right?
Yeah.
And were the employees Jewish, how many employees, and were they
Ik
Jewish employees or Polish employees?
Wiffel jeden, wiffel
Dat kan je nog niet kopen. Het meeste boys christelijk gooien. Eén vlooier kopen of 4 machines. En man, meestal weer dan met vlooien. One woman would work on four looms. And while the looms were working, she would just keep an eye on them. If the thread broke, she would stop it and then tie it out back up.
Was this woolens or synthetic or cotton?
There was no synthetic, it was cotton mostly.
Cotton.
Cotton.
It's gelernt.
People.
One second,
It was
I
the
took a,
size, and really it wasn't primitive I thought it was state of the art to this day after other blacks.
It was very primitive
Was it?
compared to today because
Compared
I
to
was
today. Now
3 years ago I was in South America in Uruguay and my friend has a modern factory down there and it's just unbelievable. In the olden days those bobbins were being pushed back and forth through like little arms, an arm with the motor will push like this and would push that thing back and forth. Nowadays they go by air. Those bobbins, little bobbins that carry the thread back and forth by air. Yes, yeah.
Sag mal, eigens gekauft Fabrik, was ist dir getan? Keine Schule, was ist dir getan? Was war eine Schule? Ist es gewesen dort eine jüdische Schule damals? Zu alle klar? Before, I asked what he did before he owned this factory. He did go to school. And it was a Jewish school, it was a jüdische Schule. Sen gehabt jüdische Schule? Jüdische
Was it
Not
religious?
religious. Oh,
Not
no.
religious.
This is because the Polish system had Jewish schools and non-Jewish schools. Yeah, they were private. They were private. So that was the
Oh, yeah.
system that-
So there was no religious education.
Es ist nicht gewählt religiös, speziell.
Sie gewesen nach Schule, was muss
Oh, you could get some secular.
One of the subjects was religion. It was a public school.
Public school bin ich kein
No.
Public school gegangen.
Wie viele Juden sind gegangen? The
Nee.
public school.
Hier bei mir, weet warte eine Minute.
Ich hab Leute.
Blois Eden, the later is ik weet niet, kan je nooit. The public school that I went to, it was just, you know, it wasn't co-educational. The public school, and there were the students were all Jews. The teachers, some of them were non-Jews, some teachers, but most of them were Jews, and the students were all Jews.
All
They're-
boys.
All boys, right.
And what did you study?
All subjects, you know, Polish, mathematics, history, geography, all these, physics, you know, all these subjects.
High school.
No. Elementary school. Elementary school.
Was haben die
Jo,
Juden
no,
gehabt?
ist bei mir bei Konstanten. Wo ist jüdische Kinder?
Was haben die Juden gehabt? Sie haben private Schulen, so das can't game
Wat ik ken.
in our public
Sie gewesen jüdische Gymnasiums, sie gewesen.
But
There were
die
Jewish.
jüdische Gehille gestützt ein jüdische
Nee.
Gymnasium.
Het geld, dat gekost geld.
Jewish.
High schools were not free.
Ah,
High
high
school,
school.
elementary school was free.
High school.
Seventh grade was free.
After
And then after that, if somebody could afford it, he went to high school. For instance, he went to high school, very gymnasium steam. But he was going to Shakinen. I didn't go to high school. We you know, but whoever could afford
Went to high
went to high school. I have a friend who lives now in Florida, and they were very poor. His father was a locksmith, so he did repairs for the Hebrew school. It was a Hebrew Jewish, high school, but the school couldn't afford to pay him, so they said, "Send your boy to school." So he's the only one from our gang, the poorest boy, who went to high school.
Because
We
his
didn't.
father worked out his
Yeah.
tuition.
Did
Wojtek went to high school.
He went to high school, right?
Das
All
Gymnasium.
of his, you know.
Nicht gehen. Was ist passiert, bis das nicht
Ik
gehen?
hoop dat ons gehouden met mijn moeder ben ik geworden.
He got ulcers.
Ulcer, yeah.
Thanks, I know. He got ulcers.
Nee,
His stomach was no good and he quit school. En dan ook was his
Nee, ik ben
En wat-
van die high school ben nog weer naar andere. Zeker, ik kan er waarschijnlijk. Niet eerst high school. Dus niet gegaan.
Nicht high school.
Nee,
But these,
einmal. Ik ga de gelijk dat is uitgekomen. Ze gewinnt high school gegangen. Dat had het gekregen, dat is een dikke geschicht, dat is niet zo gewoon. High school gegangen, denk ik, zo'n boodschap.
Ah, then had his
Mijn had ik weet wat geheest naar
He says in the high schools, people went around all night.
let me clarify with him. High school, Michael Bensky Gymnasium.
Jo, ik ben gang van deze toegediend.
Oh, je bent niet gaan gymnasium,
Ja,
maar
zeker.
gymnasium op de Kioskeri.
Zo ligt het zo. Zo ligt het zo. Want je kent geen Schule in een Volksschule, dat is ook niet gekostet.
Ja.
En bij ons zijn alle kinderen gegangen in de Schule, zo kostet.
Yeah, all of them went to high
He
school.
says his family was well enough off, so I think.
What did his father do?
He had a sugar business. Oh, fantastic got the
Zucker.
sugar business. Stationary, because of
Zucker.
remember?
In Polen met Zucker een monopol.
A monopoly. In Poland, sugar was a monopoly.
Niet jeder kent handel met Zucker.
But they'll but coming.
Niet erg, dat de ganze company in een huisje als Sachen.
Ja.
Een shit van
Shit,
Sachen.
Yeah.
Als Sachen doen.
There were
We
specific.
komen aan, nehmen wir auf Zucker.
So
Und
they
das
got
Handel
the
von Zucker,
privilege of handling sugar.
und das Handel von Zucker geht nicht in Krähen.
Exact. There were wholesalers,
Wholesalers.
distributors, hutownikies.
Yeah.
En bij de Zucker kun je voorstellen, maar een zak Zucker van 100 kilo zet je niet één mark. Een zak, een kilo Zucker kan het de baan had gekost wie 100 kilo Zucker 1 mark.
Eens lotte.
1 zloty.
This is Billy.
Een kilo Zucker had
Niet
gekost.
billig. En het is niet billig. Het is niet
Give
billig.
us an example. What did
I'll
he?
give you an example. A kilo chicken was one zloty. For that zloty, you could buy 20 Kaiser rolls.
And a kilo is 2
For
pounds. of
for
sugar
1 kilo
rice.
sugar was the equivalent of 20 Kaiser rolls.
So
20 zammelen in Koifen.
So you would say it was expensive?
Expensive. Like a dollar, officially a dollar was like 5 zlotys and 20 groschen. So sugar was expensive, right?
In school, did you speak Yiddish or Polish in the school?
Not school Polish.
In-
Yiddish auch.
Polish. Schools. And were there schools for girls?
Ben ik zijn Nederland gegaan, Nederland, nee, no, it's not co-education.
No, but
Separate schools.
And did the girls go to school?
Of course.
Yeah,
Separate and
that
equal.
is just as
Separate,
a
not equal.
public schools,
Yes.
like his,
Yeah.
girls' schools.
Yeah, there was a
His
school
sisters
where
went.
there was no co-education.
Did either of you go to Hager? Hebrew or Yiddish?
Oh yeah, I went out and maybe I'm gonna hide it, I'm gonna hide it.
Ja, das ist gehabt von Bar Mitzvah.
Aber mit Snow,
Jo.
Nein, das ja.
Oh, ja.
Aber das ist nicht gegangen, mit Federn, so was war in der Grill.
Kleine Schule.
Oh, it's Schule.
Een dagsschool, niet bij een
He went to a Jewish school, so he
Ja,
did some studying of Hebrew things. in
Oh,
his-
bij
In his elementary school.
Ja,
in
maar
his,
ik
high school.
So
that's why it's like-
And did they both have bar mitzvah?
Dan in op de
Maar
laag.
Nederlanders gelijk.
Nee, al in bij dat niet ook al.
Ja.
Aha.
But then
So,
was the Gilal Davin
He went to a high school that
to his high
Jewish
school that was
school
Jewish.
where they were teaching that Hebrew classes too. They taught how to pray.
But the day
daven.
school.
And
So he
No,
learned
my
that.
school no. My school no. I went
This
to
is a
Hager
Gilal. Oh, it's
when
Gilal.
I was a kid, you know, starting maybe 6, 7 years. I started in Hager after school.
And
I
that's
used
how
to
you
have to
prepared
go.
for Bar Mitzvah.
so
Yeah.
he learned his Jewish things in school and you learned your Jewish things in
Yeah,
Jewish
in
school.
Hager.
Just like today.
Yeah.
Some go to day
Yeah.
school and
And some
some.
go to public school and Hebrew school after.
And it
Was
was
Lodge-
cheaper not to go to day school.
Was it divided? Did the Jews live in one part and the Christians in the other part?
Most of the time, yes, there were Jewish sections.
He
Where
went to
there
the
was
school until he was
the
14.
Christians most of the time were the janitors. Could be an apartment house. See, the apartment houses were closed in boxes, like, and every house would have had like 20, let's say 20, 30 apartments. Most of them were Jewish. And most of the time, the janitor was non-Jewish. He was like, you say, a Shabbos goy. Shabbos, you know, to make light the oven or something, so he would come up. But most of the houses, they were Jews. My size.
And was it a
gave no eat.
Was it a shtetl in the sense of having, like, in Russia, there was no, was it a ghetto or was it?
No, there were no ghettos.
No.
There were no ghettos.
In
There
Warsaw.
was a concentration of Jews. This was a huge city of
In
Warsaw.
Warsaw, there was a ghetto. Yeah?
Well, no, not called the ghetto. I went there every day of my life and I was there for 5 days. It was open and closed. People went out to work.
But there were walls around the Jewish sector, right?
Where?
In
In
Warsaw?
Warsaw, they had a gate, it was a Yiddish section, but it
But-
wasn't a closed.
But part of it is that they had a,
Walsh's Gewand, I Yes, from, there was at one
No,
point,
no.
was it an
a
Eruv?
real
Was it
ghetto.
an Eruv?
No, in Warsaw, there was a Jewish neighborhood,
The
but
Jewish
Jews lived, you
section.
know.
They said you go through the gate, that's where you
Yeah,
find.
there were no fences or gates on the thing. You know.
Zo in New York geweest.
Yeah, Williamsburg, you know, that you had a section that Jews
Like
lived.
it's a
That's how
section.
like in Denver, you had the west side, it was a Jewish
In
neighborhood.
1936, I was stuck in Warsaw at a place called the Hotel Francuska, may it rot,
Franzuski.
waiting
Probably got
for-
bombed.
waiting for my suitcase, which did not arrive till someone told me to bribe the station master. So every day for 5 days, they told me how to go to the Jewish section, which I went to explore there, and I did go through a gate. But that was only directions, you know, I guess other ways. But I visited Chaim Schmitz's relatives one day, and I had a haircut in Yiddish. I had haircuts in every language. And I went every day, you know, but it was definitely a Jewish section, there's no question. It was a Jewish world, a Jewish world in that.
And Lodge was like that too.
When you
Yeah.
say it was a Jewish world, what do you mean? What was
I
that?
didn't live there.
So I'll give you a small example. For instance, in Lodge.
Signs were Jewish.
For instance, in Lodge, in the Jewish neighborhood where most of the Jews lived, at the time of Kol Nidra, you could see hardly a person in the street.
Like New York on Yom Kippur.
Voor
That's a Jewish
resultaten,
world.
zeker alleen in het regering.
That's
But then after Dublin,
Ja, der ist damals geboren.
it's a point of space,
It's like the east side.
and that's a point of projection. Nee,
Except more so.
oh, nee.
Ik heb nooit anders gezien.
Nou, die eerste gezien, al de strushing is aangehouden. No problem. And then after the services, it was marked, the whole, this was the Jewish section.
Yeah, you know, Yivo has put out a
New
film
York, Brooklyn, dan
on
weet ik.
Jews of old Poland before the war that you haven't seen. You ought to. You will really get a feel for it. It's not our family, it's anybody's
Een
family.
lodge.
But I want to tell you, the streets they show,
Lodge,
that Yivo shows on this film by the famous filmmaker, who naturally I forget, could have been a description of my, it was like the street I walked on. There's no question, identical. That's the street I walked on in 1936. That happens to be where 55 years ago.
Jack,
55 years ago.
Oh, yes,
What they describe, what they show in the movie is exactly how Poland looked in my day.
Lodge
It was,
gehad.
it was a German, that was the, not the Steppel,
Dat is groot.
but that was the world of Eastern European Jewry. Its cradle, its cultural center with its theaters and its newspapers and its barber shops.
Die
All the language was Yiddish. The people were all collected. By the way, Muttick said some time ago that he ended his school that he described at 14
Jo,
and ended a technical school where he learned the trade of the craft or skill of weaving. Remember that he bought factories at 14.
Kennis van Jack, die als de betrapt.
All right, now,
Je kent dat niet zo.
we have a
you debated
Wat
this.
je gehad, 750 toilet, dat is
What you got?
He was
That's more like your own
place.
This is not
He
possible.
disagreed.
Give this is given advice.
Ja, aber sie, Denver hat heute eine halbe gebraucht.
No, Denver and the surrounding.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell the funniest story you can remember from Lux? Each of you
What?
tell the funniest story that you can remember of something that
Van
happened.
hoe lang? Je denkt...
Even zijn humoristische zaken
As
zoals
we zaken passeert.
In
En
Lodge.
als je kijkt humoristische zaak passeert. In de Mohammed.
Dus
Ich habe gegeben mal einen Brief, wo es der Vetter was mein Vater geschrieben einen Brief zu Deutschland, aber den Brief. Als Sie mehr wissen, wie ich habe hier den 10 ganzen Buch mit dem Brief.
He says if you look at the correspondence, which I have and I've shared with between his father and mine, you will know more about what happened there than anything he could tell you all day, and that is God's truth. I was going over a lot of them again. I paid to have some of them translated because the handwriting is not Dad's, but people who wrote to him. I could hardly do it. And some things are, you really get a feeling for the culture, so-called. Some things were very disappointing to you. It wasn't a very elegant culture, a lot of it. These were times before the war that Poland was activating economics. They were in a depression crisis in Poland. Jeden Wort ist dann Tate bestimmt, mein Tate, noch gehabt. Panosa Bissel, from the Zucker business, was gewähnt, wie schlecht es ist. Every word his father wrote to my father, for instance, was how dreadful the economy was. And noch einmal gefragt, mein Tate, wie geht bei dir Geschäften? Verkaufst immer? And how's business with you, he wrote my father. This is I would say, the late 20s. Late 20s, it was already very bad. He would ask Dad, how's your business? What are you doing now? And then later read other letters. But the flavor of what Poland was for the Jew in that time, of course you can get it through the correspondence. I want to ask them something. This is bekend, the Bobenzege from Bialas. He did not know
I
our
didn't know.
grandparents in Biala.
I don't
Isn't
remember
that
them.
interesting? Oh, das ist der Gewinn. So, look at it's a Gast. They were as guests in this house, but Jack doesn't remember
Zijn
that.
er geen lodge?
Ja.
Boven met een zijde?
Ik had een kupje.
Yeah, no, but I photographed
I
him.
don't remember.
Ja?
I
He
don't
was
remember.
in Gewinn in Biala.
Nee.
Ik ben echt
Nee.
They never went to Biala. His sister Tosha went to Biala when I visited in 1936. She went with me. And that was the first time she had ever been in Biala. I find that very difficult to comprehend. We think of it as the same country, you know, Poland here. But there it was, Biala, and they had none of them been to visit
No.
from Lodz. There is a letter, es ist der Jehovah Brief von den Zazeden. Aber schreibt wie der Bobbe, is Gewöhnheit, is Franken Walsche, sein Adopter. I have a letter from our grandfather who describes to my father that our grandmother, his wife, was sick, apparently sick enough to look for a specialist in Warsaw, and that she stayed there with Esther, Chaim Yossel's sister, in Warsaw, that she stayed with a cousin, a granddaughter of hers, in a little apartment that I remember in Warsaw. But she doesn't he says nothing about being in Lodz at that time. But apparently they came on state occasions.
So how many?
Wie weit is Biala from Lodz?
Dat kent 8 kilometer. Nog daar is het van zoeken geweest in de 20 en de 30 kilometer. Ja, en dus ook kent als je nog in de kilometer van waar nog Jallo.
Ja, is gewend wie weit?
52 kilometer.
150 miles.
150 miles.
And with transportation as it was,
That was a big
we didn't have
trip.
the auto. I went by train. It was a day's trip, sort of, in 1936.
How many of the brothers and sisters stayed in Biala, and how many were in Lodz? And
Well,
who
they
was?
weren't specifically in Biala. As a matter of fact, they were not born in Biala, the older generation. They were born in a town called Yajvin. I found that out. And later, our grandparents moved to Biala, if you will, in retirement. In Yajvin, they had land, which I didn't think was possible, but in some of the correspondence, they speak of selling off land. Remember, I read you, and it seemed very unlikely, but it was true, because Dave remembered. But it wasn't how many stayed in Biala and how many didn't. They married in small villages all the way around. I had an aunt in a place called Shedlitz, and someone else. My grandfather had a sister, Mrs. Es ist gewesen als Schwester und die Shedlitz been Fagin, Fagin Bushman. Sie geheiratet an Alman, she married a widower, and that's Fagin, seine gewesen seine Anyhow, nach Tolosbank in Biala. The Zatorskis are in the band in Biala, and you get band by Slade.
In Biala?
In Biala, das ist nicht gewesen in Biala. It is. Mit der Schwester.
Can they maybe describe something about what they can recall of family life? You know, like the
Ich will
family.
wissen, kannst du denken, what they did every day.
Family
Es
life.
gewesen dein Familienleben mit der Tante Mama, mit der Schwester, mit meinem Bruder. Mit aufgestanden in der Früh, mit dem Breakfast and gegessen Frühstück. Oh, they got up, they ate breakfast. I started. I know, I was there.
Okay.
Bacon and eggs.
Bigger than eggs.
Done up? Yeah. Done up?
I remember, and I didn't go, I never went to Biala to see my grandparents, but I remember the year that war broke out in 1939, my mother and my 2 sisters, the ones who live in Israel, Fela and Tamala, and my nephew, I had an older sister, her name was Kenya, she was born in 1914.
A little older than I.
Yeah, she was born, I had also an older brother who was born in 1916. He died in the ghetto of hunger. As a matter of fact, he died on D-Day, June the 6th, 1944. He died of starvation. And my sister Henya, with her little boy, I don't remember now, little Sebek, how old he was. They were sent out in 1942 to an extermination camp. So my mother, my two sisters, and this little nephew, they went to Biala for the summer in 1939. And they came back shortly before the Germans invaded. Shortly before the Germans invaded Poland. So
Zijn
they,
dat de warmte van de zee?
then, yeah, then again, they went for the summer, and that's the first and only time that they met the grandparents. But I never met them.
Just go back.
Er zullen misschien naar kleine woordjes. Stir like
No,
he doesn't remember.
I don't remember ever
I find that so
seeing the rest
impossible.
of the family. For instance, the cousins like Esther, there were those are first cousins. There was a sister, Javi. Then there was Javi and Zipporah and Haniosel and Esther, right? So they all came to lodge and they all stayed with us.
So you didn't know that?
Them I knew. First Javi, she was a millinery
These are
worker,
sisters.
a beautiful woman, a
Whose children were
beautiful
this?
girl.
These,
She
these
fell
are first cousins of ours.
Yeah.
From another.
from another
aunt.
aunt, another sister, another
Which sister?
And the Javi, did you know Javi committed suicide?
Yes.
Yeah, she fell in love with some kind of a nobody, a tailor, a hunchback. She fell in love with him, and for some reason, I don't know what happened, she committed
Do you
suicide.
know what the family said there? The family said that she committed suicide because she grieved so over her mother who was dying of cancer.
Oh, so then later, Haniosel came to lodge, and he was about to be 21.
Their family
And this
name was Tuckerman.
Zuckerman, yeah. And I remember he came to lodge, he stayed with us, and I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night, and he would pacing the floor. It was before he had to go to the army, to
The
the
draft.
doctor, to the draft. Yeah, to conscription. So he paced the floor, and I remember he was drinking lemon juice in
He was
order not to
trying
have enough weight, to just to escape the draft.
Met zijn opgezaaid.
Gaan jas als gemosje, dat is gewoon klein
Yes,
beetje.
gemoshed, whatever that means.
Gemosje.
It means to take off weight like
Yeah,
this.
he tried like he fasted. Like he fasted.
To be too skinny.
Yeah.
Did he succeed?
So I remember I was a kid.
Yeah,
He was, and
He was
at that time
schizophrenic, but that's all right. He didn't know that they wouldn't take him in.
yeah. So and then he went to Palestine, and then the younger sister Esther, she had at that time a little boy. They lived in Warsaw, and her husband was a Shlomazel.
It's called a Luftmensch.
Yeah, he couldn't make a living, so he decided he'll go overseas, and he went to Uruguay, to Montevideo. And so she was left alone, so she came to lodge, and she stayed with us. Don't forget, we were 5 children in the house, and mother, because my father died when I was 10 years old. And she came with a little boy, and we all stayed in the same apartment. And I don't remember how long he stayed in Montevideo, but shortly before the war, he came back on a cattle ship. He couldn't afford to come back on a regular. Somehow he scraped enough money to come back on a cattle ship. And I saw her, the last time I saw her, when he saw her. When the Germans already came to lodge, and he escaped to Warsaw, and then to Russia. I escaped to Warsaw, and then I went back to lodge. Because
Would he tell something with his escape?
dat zijn die zo die besantwoorden in de lodge.
Can you tell what happened as the Germans were coming to lodge, and then what you did?
Well, I'll tell you what I know. When the Germans came in, before even the Germans came in, we able-bodied men, we started running away towards Warsaw. So I
You knew
remember,
before that they were coming across the border? You knew
oh yeah,
before
we knew they were already
All
on the
the
march.
Poles knew.
Yeah, they were already on the march.
Bombed the hell out of Warsaw.
So we started running away So I was there, my brother-in-law and my brother, and I remember that's
Why
what-
did- why did
that's
you
what
rent the-
Isaac is ook gelopen.
Ze verwazen. Waar was het nu gelopen nog was?
Maar gezegd dat de Deutsche,
Het is een bisschen,
die heeft het zijn gemaakt.
weet je, zijn zijde.
Ja.
Ik ken nog die mannen dat de begonnen heeft whisky gebrochen. Is in 3 en 5 toe, dus je weet wat bij de Duits. In 5 toe zit
His memory is that after the war broke out, the Germans had lunch in 5 days.
Wie zo'n gemaakt die mobilisatie, zo'n toen heeft ze geen. Om de dus de schoenen Duitse geleden.
Why lots so
In de
quickly?
stoet,
They started marching.
Was it close? It was close to the border.
Was it close to the border?
After the Germans crossed the border,
Yes,
they
The
just kept
Russians
marching.
and the Germans got together and divided Poland in 1939.
Right.
And then the Nazis attacked Poland.
Als we zo ongelukkig vieren begonnen, om schon de polnische Armee schon mit Zarak und schon gegeben haben, durch die Kameradien zu gehen, als alle wussten, Soldaten gewesen, du müssen gehen, du, und alle müssen gehen, du, sonst ich gerade keinen richtigen Platz, ich bin
Their army was destroyed, the authority
The
was
Polish
divided.
army.
This is the
Yeah,
Polish
they
army.
did put up resistance, but it was
At
like.
first, but on the radio, they gave orders, you go here, you go there. They gave places to
No,
run.
no, mostly they said to go to Warsaw,
To Warsaw.
to defend Warsaw. Obrony Warszawy.
That's why-
Now, when you ran away to Warsaw, did your family encourage you to run away? What was happening in Lodz with the rest of the family?
Ich bin Männer, wenn es gewiss, ob man gehabt hat, wegen Mobilisation, die haben wir ungeheuer, die Radioprima verschiedene die Männer.
Die bist gegangen für Mobilisation, für die Soldaten, meinst du?
Nicht gegangen direkt, aber sonst schon geriefen.
They were calling people, the young men, to
To
mobilize,
mobilize to run to Warsaw,
To
to
save
defend Warsaw,
Warsaw.
the
to
capital.
defend Warsaw. These were radio.
This is Polish radio asking
Yeah,
all
yes,
young
yeah,
soldiers.
yeah.
All young men.
Before
So
the
that-
Germans took it
You
over.
asked why they ran to Warsaw, and this is right.
And then, what did your mother say when you were going? Was this
Ich
considered
bin
something?
ungeheuer, immer gegangen, ich bin mein Bruder.
He and his brother.
Bei uns, von uns.
Genoeg. Maar bij de zoeken. Dan neemt ze me gelopen hier, met moeilijk in mijn schoenen. Ik denk dat ze me daar schoenen is dat is ook de winst gelopen. So we started running away. Our mother, the mothers encouraged us because they said that the men will be suffering under the Germans. So the men started running away. But with in this case, this was right in the first days of September. The Germans crossed probably already in there, and then we decided to run away. We started marching towards, not Brzezin, towards a place called Brzezin.
By what means did you go?
We walked. So we had to walk in the ditches because the whole highway, so to speak, the road, was full of military. With horses and the way everything was horses most of the time. Was full, and we had to walk in the ditches.
This is Polish military?
Yeah, Polish military was running away from Lodz towards Warsaw. Polish military. And I'll never forget, we went through a small village that was occupied by ethnic Germans, and they were shooting from the houses at the Polish military. Die weiß ich wegen
Yeah,
dem.
the Germans were waiting.
Denkt u nog, was soll nog geweest nog weg op regime? Ze zijn een Duitse mensen, een Duitse boy. Zo geschossen nog militair in de hazen.
Yeah, this just
The
recently,
Deutsch.
last year.
Then it's ontploffen. So when we came into this place, Brzezin, on the way towards Warsaw, we came in, it was already, maybe 10 o'clock at night. And for some reason, I don't know what happened, the Germans started dropping flares. It got light as during the day. And they were starting shooting from all sides.
Well, the flare was to light up the
Yeah,
target.
and the road, I'm telling you, the road was packed with Polish military. So it was such a panic, and we saw, where are you going to, so we decided we're going to go back. We came only to this place, Brzezin, and we started walking back. And on the way back, I remember we saw, dead bodies laying there. And we finally got back, and this was just in the beginning.
Back to Lodge.
Back to Lodge. We came back to Lodge.
Did you find your homes again? You went.
We went back to
went back
our
to the
family.
homes.
And I'm pretty sure that we ran away before the Germans came into Lodge. In zijn mij geloven nog eide. Because before the Germans came in, and then I remember when we came back to Lodge, maybe a day later, I remember being on the main square there. Had wel dat zijn op plaats van Luchtje ben ik geweest. A German soldier, a single German soldier, came in on a motorcycle, all dirty, you know, on a motorcycle, came in and came to a fire station, parked his motorcycle there, and went in as if he was from there, as if he knew what he was doing. He must have been an ethnic German from Poland.
He knew the territory.
He knew the territory, because he went in there, we saw him, we looked to the cracks in the fence, he went over, there was a basin with water, you know, in the washtub there. Ik ga niet vergessen, als Stražak, dat gedenkt zich met Stražak, wie dat zei, want is op alleen in plaats van dat je met Stražak niet was. Ja, gedenk, ik heb met ze voeren aan Deutsch. Eine deze Deutsche raak nog een motor zich spitzig, aangevoerd in plaats van dat je, en dan aangevoerd door de park, de afwegstende motor zich, en dan aangaan in de wijn, ik heb ook meer aan Volksdeutsch, aan Deutsch. Gewiss jaar krijgt, en dan zie ik aan de dorp zich ook gewaschen door. I'll never forget that. He was, see all the, Poland had so many Germans there. That everything, all the airplanes, I read stories, all the airplanes that the Polish military, they wanted to go to, they were all sabotaged, they wouldn't fly.
Because of the ethnic Germans.
Yeah, Lodz was a city that had 250,000 Jews, 250,000 Polish people, and 250,000 Germans.
No wonder the Polacks hated everybody. They felt outnumbered.
250,000 Germans. So we came back and waited the next day. I'll never forget when the German army came back. Die is niet gezegd geweest, de Duitsen, de militairen.
Did he go on to Lodge?
No, he kept on, yeah. He goes. Nou, ik warte gaan bis waar ik schön bij. Die beschikking ben ik niet schrikken. Oh, die is all schrikken.
He also returned.
Oh, die is all schrikken.
They returned after this first sally.
So, but I remember de gedenk van de Duitse armee aangekomen naar Lodge. Die samen hier naast de eerste paden zitten in de richting van de fabriek.
Do you think this is
I remember. I'll never forget.
You saw it, describe it for us.
That might compared to I was a kid. I was 18 years old, almost 19. Yeah, I have to say they came in the horses. I've never seen horses like that. We used to go like they call them like Belgian horses, big horses pulling all those armor, the army, the howitzer, just that power that they came in. It was just
terrifying.
Like, terrifying is the word. Terrifying. The way they came in, couldn't believe it. They kept on marching.
Terrorized the population.
Yeah. And then soon after they came in, they started already. We couldn't walk in the streets. They would come out, with trucks around the block and just gather people. And the
Gather Jews.
They gathered up people, and then the Polacks made them wise to the fact that the Jews were circumcised. This way they could distinguish who was a Jew and who was not.
Montek wants to say that he remembers more than he does, because he left in 1939 and spent the war in Russia. So his memories of Poland ended when he...
How did we get from Warsaw to Russia?
Wait,
Let it go where there's energy.
How did he get to Russia? He's going to tell us.
Mijn tat had gehad zieken. En ze hebben gehad vergt met zogenaamde wegen. En wat ze vier die zegt zieken.
The Russenograd.
Der Tate,
His
sag
father
Kopf.
had sugar, and they had the means of
They had
transport.
horses
Horses
and big
and
wagons, you know.
Ja,
So
ja. In 1931, nog genoeg komen daar, nog genoeg komen. Om mensen gewoond alleen verschil op mij, 43 was het.
vind ik het raar, zie je.
Vind ik
Ik
het
moet dat
raar.
Vind ik het raar.
In Sebek had gewoond alleen verschil op mij, 43.
In Miel 41.
Het is gewoond alleen verschil op mij.
41.
Telling their addresses, which I still have.
Next one is
Ja.
Can you translate what just happened?
It's called the First of Main Street, Piershego Maya.
Alleen verschil op mij.
The First of
Yeah,
Main Street.
I don't understand what just happened.
He said, we lived at the Alea Piershego Maya. We lived on
In
First of Main
Lux.
Street. Yeah. Er was Blankstoys.
Ja, ergens.
Yeah.
Sebek had gewoond in een nijhuis.
That's Andrea
Yeah.
says.
Ja.
Next house to ours.
Sebek was married, it's just
Yeah,
possible.
Yeah.
He was married,
Right.
of course, to his first wife.
Not Frank.
Sebek, not Frank.
Ja.
He lived
Hier
in
ligt-
another house.
in
On the
dem
same street.
Haus am gewoond polnische Offizier.
He lived in a house where also Polish officers lived.
Apartment house.
His brother.
Die polnische Offiziere sind da weggelaufen.
They ran.
Maar met de polnische Armeeën wat ze weggelaufen.
Daarmee.
The Polish officers ran or Savage ran?
Ja,
They ran.
Ran away to Warsaw or just ran
Of
to
course.
Ja. In
Dispersed.
die polnische Offiziere sind wir rein zum deutschen Offizier.
And German officers moved into these dwellings that the Polish officers vacated.
Ja,
It's like that.
Sebek hat gehabt, er wollte ganz am zweiten und am dritten Stock. Ich weiß, ein Wohnung von einem polnischen Offizier auf dritten Stock weggelaufen. Es hat gesetzt der Deutsche in einem die Parterre gewesen.
Brother Sebek had a dwelling on the second floor, and it was the one on top, the third floor, and one below him
They were
was
Germans.
vacated.
Yeah.
And so Germans moved
Is er
in.
mitgekommen, der ein Offizier von den Deutschen zu Sebek sehr fein. Und hat ihn gemacht, der Vorschlag, also wie von der Chava neben ihm. Und ich habe eine Wohnung hier, und sei er sich hier. Öfters die mir geht, dein Wohnung, und ich ist ja noch in der zweite, mein
He was approached by a German officer, unbelievably,
To what?
to trade departments. So apparently the full meaning of their presence wasn't yet.
Seine Gewinn, also ja, fein.
See, Hefner, very polite and nice.
Von Gerät.
The trade apartments.
Selbstverständlich war er hat den Ball gegeben, wenn sie tun.
Yeah.
What did the German officer
They
approach you
wanted
for?
to trade apartments, because they asked nicely.
Wait, they wanted to trade with your family
Sebek,
or with
with Sebek.
Sebek's family?
Sebek.
That's fine.
Sebek's had the nicer apartment.
No,
No, no,
because
no.
they wanted to be
The
together.
building
Yes,
the building where his brother lived was a new building. And that building, there were Polish officers, but when they ran away, so those two apartments were vacated. So Germans moved in. So one lived above Sebek's apartment and one lived below the apartment. So one of the officers says, you know, since he lives here, why don't we trade? You go down and take this apartment and we'll go up there.
what interests me is, it sounds as if it were just a very ordinary.
They didn't say, get out.
They, yeah.
And so what happened?
Well, that's what he wouldn't have done up then, was his.
Der hat Kontakt mit diesen Deutschen. Sind die
He
gewesen,
said
meine
he had
Brüder,
the contact.
wir haben gewesen mit den Deutschen, sind die schon gekommen, sind
So
dort
they were in touch,
gewesen.
they were in touch, you
Nicht
know,
lang, aber
with those two. He was, his brother was in touch with these two German officers.
Sie haben doch gehabt, wie heißt das, auch Ordonnanzen, die deutsche Offiziere.
They had the ordinance.
Ordonnanzen.
No, do you know what an ordinance is?
They had arms, they had arms.
No.
Like the city law?
No. They had, you know, a soldier that did all the things for
Orderly.
Orderly.
Oh,
Und
servants.
die Orderlies haben schon gemacht, was selber, so mit Sachen, so gemacht.
So Sebek
Yeah.
benefited.
Benefit, yeah.
So translate this?
Well, the orderlies did for the
Yeah.
Sebek, some of the things they
Different
did for the
things.
German officers. They cleaned up, they brought nice
Yeah.
things.
So the German orderlies helped.
Yeah, for what I don't know, yes, so.
Ja. Das ist gewinnt.
Das ist gewinnt Anfang. Wie lange ist das umgegangen?
Das ist auch nicht umgegangen.
Das
Nee, aber die Offiziere, nee, erzählen.
Longer than a week.
Erzählen.
This lasted for longer than
Maybe a month, maybe a month,
Maybe
some
a
more.
month.
in the first days of the
Yeah,
occupation.
Die Offiziere haben gesagt, geht's weg.
Mhm.
Sie sind Stein geht frei.
They were friendly officers and they said to his brother, you guys better get out of here. I'm telling you, it's not going to be
Yeah,
good.
they warned them, but they, they
The
were.
German officers told them to get out.
Friendly with them.
Es sind Kinder,
These were the good
glaube ich, gehört, dass
Germans.
offen, aber so wieso.
There were some,
Ja.
They weren't specific, but they.
just said it won't be good.
Yeah,
You better go.
Better move away from here.
Now, were you still in Lodz at that
He was
time?
based in Los
Ja,
Angeles.
gewinnt.
Yeah,
You were still
She
there.
was in touch with
So
them.
Stevik told you
Jetzt,
this?
ja. Man gewohnt nicht weit, zwei, drei Häuser. Man hat ständig
They lived very close
They
together.
lived like, they were.
Mein Vater hat gekonnt, Zigaretten gekonnt an die deutsche Firmen. Es war die deutschen Firmen, alles in der heutigen Klasse, wie die Grenze, Industrie über Deutschen. Sie sind gewesen, die situierte Deutschen. Die beste
The
Geschäfte
ethnic
Deutschen.
Germans
yeah.
were well situated.
Oh yeah, in Lodge, a lot
They were
of
an upper-
big textile
They were an
factories
upper
were German
class
owned.
economic.
Ja, wenn wir nehmen wollen.
And Oman,
Ja,
yeah,
das ist mega aus. Jetzt hat man noch Nummer 1 in der Ehe der Erdnuss. Aber hat man Pussige, erstens an der Tour, ja, alle Populace.
They were discussing
Yeah,
now
actually,
what
they
ought we
had
to do
right.
now. And
In
they,
in
his
the family.
father, in the
In the
family,
family.
in his family, his father suggested
Yeah.
they might be better off in a small town. Perhaps they should all go to Biala Podlaska.
Which is where the grandparents were.
Where the grandparents now were. The buses were.
Aber beschlossen, als ich so ein.
They determined that he should go there and look it over.
Ja, ich habe gekeken, selber gerade erfreut.
He was free.
Yeah.
Sevek was married.
Ja. Ich habe von.
And this, the Zayn was done, was began machen.
Sehen
If
Sie, wie dort
it's feasible.
Did
Yeah.
Sevek have children then?
No, at Mishkan.
No, his older sister had two.
Ik ben niet lang verheiratet. Zeg ik ben niet lang
He was a new bridegroom in this
No,
man.
no, long time.
Yeah.
Ich kann lange Zeit reden.
Yeah.
En ich bin
He
gefunden.
was gefroren from Biala.
So, gesollt von der Piano.
Yeah, he was going to go to Biala.
En ik ben eigenlijk in het zoek. Ik ben gevonden bis Warsch.
So he went as far as Warsaw.
In Warsch bin ich aber gewohnt bei die.
Esther. Ich bin auch gewesen bei ihr, Natasha. When we left it, everyone stayed there.
En als ik gewohnt there.
Translate a bit there.
He says he went as far as Warsaw. And in
Himself, by
Warsaw,
himself.
by himself. And he spent the night with our cousin Esther, the first cousin who lived in Warsaw.
Ja, ik ben daarheen gekomen zu Esther. Esther bin ganz alleen.
She was all by herself. In a Stücken Kinder.
Wusste ich gewesen, ihr Mann und ihr Manns Brüder und ihr Manns Schwester, die Schwester in 80 gewesen, die Schwester gewesen. Ihr Mann, den Haus gefunden, Einkäufen Lebens, dann haben wir ziemlich mal in der Dörfer war Einkäufen Lebensmittel, haben es Getränke gestohlen, haben es gekauft und haben Verdient abgesagt.
Das ist nicht gewesen, nach dem
No, in the minimum,
This is
No
the
laws
beginning
for
and
the
Anfang.
Das
minimum.
wird schon gewiss
found his
sein,
cousin
war schon
right
vier
alone.
Wochen bis March.
Her husband and all the other men
Bei
were
March
involved
vier Wochen
went
bis
to see if they could gather up
Und
stuff,
ich bin 5 Tage.
whether by whose use or sale during the days they were anticipating.
So she was alone, but her husband was still in Warsaw?
Yeah.
Because they were planning for
We're
the,
planning for something.
they were planning for the,
Yeah,
trying
so
to,
Vila Anders to give them
were they planning for the,
Ja, bei Nacht haben wir gehört, bin ich gewesen dort und ich bin spät bei Nacht, hätten sie gekommen da, Abu gekommen hinten. Seine Schwester gewesen bei ihr, seine Schwester.
Yes, her husband's
Die
sister.
zwei Brüder gewesen. Ich komme, wo haben sie gesucht, die Esther hat gesucht, die Schwester, da oben kommen da, in der Ruhe gegangen, sie helfen mal Russen, die ganze Sache was umgeprägt dort, für Dorf.
Oh, they thought
Yeah.
that there was the people
Yeah.
coming back with the produce.
Du sollst gewiss sein, also ihr halb 11.
Yeah, it was about
Nun, wir alle hochgegangen. Das ist Esther, ich kenne sogar 2 kleine Kinder. Ganz
Yes,
ganz
because they-
And it's made of
Ganz
soul
klein.
that time.
Yeah.
Ganz klein. gemäß mir älter.
Yeah, seven.
Und sie geblieben, und ich bin die Schwester gegangen, man gewohnt zu helfen, aber ich bin
To unload the wagon.
Download.
Ich habe Fahrt im Häus, hab die Gas, und da sollten wir oben, jeder doch ein Deutsche,
Soldat.
nicht Soldat, ein Deutsche,
Hier.
Herr, ein Deutsche, wie heißt das, da mache 2 Mann mit dem, insgesamt kontrolliert die Gegend. Doch ein Deutsche macht 2 deutsche Offiziere, die Soldaten muss sie kontrollieren.
Ja.
Und Sie sehen in Sarusson und Frauen, sie schon noch 10, jetzt noch die Toten war, Charus genug.
Aus,
Auf
der
der ersten
Curfew.
Welt, links, in Mahatins. Warte dort, sind geschrocken, haben gedenkt, dass sie dort Gewehr und das, bald reingestellt, und so, immer uns alle aufgeführt, in der Deutsch.
Ah, one more.
Dort sind nicht gekannt, darauf geht sie, Esther, sie, die Schwester, seine Brüder.
They went down what they thought would be to help unload the wagons that they heard come with what they presumed was produce.
At 10:30 or 10.
At
He and
10:30.
Esther went down.
No,
No.
Esther stayed with her little children. She had tiny children, 2 of them.
But
The other young people.
He
she had
and
mother.
Esther's sister-in-law.
When they got
Sister-in-law,
down,
the chicken.
just as they were about, the wagon was indeed the one they were looking for, and they were about to unload it, they were immediately stopped by 2
Two German, a
patrols.
a German
A German
patrol.
patrol of 2 guys, strong-armed, a lot of,
Yeah,
and told them
and
to
hold them away to
cease and desist, and they hauled them off. They,
jail.
wie gesagt, in
Aber das Gelingen, und das gefiert, sie war nach, und das gefiert, noch gehört, ich kann noch den Mann, es war doch gegangen, und noch gefällt, und sie hat gesagt, und das gefiert, was ich sage.
they
Jail.
took them to jail.
Und ja, das gefiert alle Nachrichten. Wenn wir 4 Mann sind, jeder gewinnt eine extra,
They separated them.
nicht jeder gewinnt separat, nicht alle zusammen.
Just outside, they separated.
They separated
themselves.
The 4 of them.
The 4 of them, they
There
separated.
were-
now who were the 4?
The 4 was the cousin's husband, his brother, and the sister that he went down to help unload and him. Those are the 4.
The one that
There were 2
wasn't
brothers and a
picked up-
sister and Motu.
One that wasn't picked up was Esther with the 2 children.
Esther, she was left alone up there.
Till
She
later.
didn't know what was going on. They never came back.
Interessante Meise.
Yes,
Ich mach jetzt alles, ich hab keiner hat nicht, wer mit wem hat du retten worden, ich hab weggeführt. Es hat auch im ersten Tag, ist reingekommen, was jetzt so passiert ist. Sie gewinnt man
the second day, they shaved their
Aber
heads.
wie schön die sitzen nicht ist. Wie schön die
The Tag nicht gesagt, was wird sein, the Tag, was mit Tag genommen. Oh, because they violated the
Gar
ritual.
nicht gesagt.
Gar nicht gesagt. Oh, because they
Jeden
were
Obgesicht Kopf schön beendet.
Already shaved their head.
Das war mir jetzt
They were all in separate
separate
cells.
cells.
Yeah.
Und was ich kriege die Breite Bräut, kann ich nicht essen, weil der Mann wohnt nicht. Also ich bin gesessen, also ich bin noch gewählt, 10 oder 11.
10 or 11 days, they sat
10 or
there
11
like that.
days.
Were you frightened?
Mal gehabt, weißt du? Was mal
So,
gehabt.
Ja, aber einmal auch mal geschlagen.
They also
They beat him.
polyglotts.
Mit der Stimme.
With his
Das
thing.
erste von mir, das wäre eine Katastrophe, das erste von meinem Leben, hier habe ich Gefängnis, ich habe gewiss, was ist.
First time in his life, he knew what it was to
For
be
jail.
confined. And it's-
Was ist gelingt?
with a beating yet.
Doch, du sagst, ja, es kennt noch der Mann, einmal sitzen wir sind allein.
Yeah.
Ja,
Alone.
ja, wir sind allein, kräft das jetzt sein Wort.
Thinking what's gonna be, what's gonna be, you know?
Geht auf den Tier, ins Kind da rein, hat euch offizier.
Door then opens and comes a German officer.
Ja, Winograd, Montag, ja, Sie sind frei. Du gehst, bist ein
You are
freier
free,
Mensch.
you can go
You
home.
can go.
Ja, hat er noch gesagt. Heute ist Freitag. Heute ist Freitag. Und Freitag ist Schabbos. Und du bist frei. Also,
Okay.
Shabbos. This is Friday and it's before
Tomorrow is
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
You go home.
He said tomorrow is Shabbos.
ja, und du sitzt da und du bist gewählt am Firma, das bist gewählt durch Zehner. Das ist die gewählte Sache. Alles ist frei.
That's it, that was your charge, you were
What were you charged with?
with breaking the curfew
The
after
curfew.
10, a minor things,
Yeah.
after 11 days in a beating. He said, oh, okay.
And the German said,
Oh, but they're
today's Friday, tomorrow Shabbos, he said.
Der Kopf gewesen.
Tell him, we know you're a Jew, this is, yeah.
Der Kopf ist aber gewesen.
But his head was shaved.
Schreck.
Terrible.
Vorher schon gedacht, ob ich da wusste. Ich war da wusste ich hier dort, ich bin gestanden, die zwei Brüder.
Also, they ordered the They let the others
Später,
also
was
go.
hat er gesagt? Was hat er gewusst? Ich habe ich habe nicht gewusst. Sie zwei Brüder gewesen. Das Mädel und ich nicht gewesen. Was hat er gewusst? Also immer in seiner Stil. In die Schwester gewesen. Sie gesessen dort und sie hat gewählt die ganze Zeit. Sie hat geschrieben, so das Kind, der Zeit nachdem. Immer hat sie auch bis nach 2, sie 3.
They let the woman out. She was sitting and moaning and wailing that she had a young child and all. They let her out after the second or the third day. The two men were let out with
Sie auch ist sie wird schon gemacht dort auch mit dem sie gelaufen schon sie Polizei sie mit dem in sie hat es bewegt am uns
She was still manipulating to let them go, he thinks. But you can see those were different days than when the Nazis really took final. That's very interesting. They were still able to manipulate.
Wenn er mal eingeführt die das in
Der Paschis.
nicht aber ja in Paschis
Und the bands, the
Lodge
yeah, das ist schon gewesen.
naja
He's asking when the bands were put on. He needed
I
to
don't
know
remember.
something.
Schon, in so immer Whisky gekommen. Ich habe die 11 Tug und ich bin jetzt geteilt. Ich kenne den Mann von die 11 oder 10 Stück in der die zwei Brüder sind mit uns gehinget. Also, so haben sie mir gesagt, was mitnehmen. Haben sie noch eine Düste gegeben, das kann ich
He
nicht
didn't eat
Ich
anything.
bin nicht krank auf dem Mund. Ich habe gemeint, dass ich das Freude am Start.
So he saved those 10 pieces of bread and the two
Yeah.
brothers devoured it.
Ja.
So scarred.
Ja.
Yeah.
Ich habe gemeint, dass ich am besten das Freude gestorben bin.
Here and also he was afraid to eat that bread. They didn't eat
So
it.
he didn't eat anything.
Ja.
So he starved his ulcer through
Yeah.
healing.
Das ist schwarz Freude, okay, mal ich
It was
Black
black bread.
Es gibt fünf Wasser, das ist doch gepeint,
Ja,
einfach.
ich kann nicht gehabt haben, ja, es
Bis dahin gegangen.
Nein, ich will Warsche.
Wasser, das ist das old Kind in Piala from
Ja,
Boston.
ja,
Remember, this is en route to see my grandmother.
Ja.
Sounds like little
Okay.
So,
That's
so,
one
then,
then?
so then what happened when you got out?
Ja, ja,
So let's
ja,
continue.
das gegangen, schon.
Ja.
Das Essen.
Yeah.
Nur auch, ein
you-
bisschen, aber ich will bleiben, du bist ein bisschen erholen.
They said, please
Much
stay a
of
few
it.
days so you can
Ich bin
recover
afraid
from your
that's-
experience.
You went back to stay with Esther.
Yes, yes.
Ja, mit zwei Wegen, mit zwei
With the two brothers who were
Ja,
there.
der Recht werden sie. Misschien weet kon de schande, kon de schahoog, kon de links, west, dus ik weet ook van meer.
It was terrible. As a young boy, I had no
Ja.
Ashanda.
Zelfs de Englisch, ik weet ook schande geweest. Maar ja, jedenfalls in 2, 3, ik ga een beetje horen, presje niet voor een ja, presje niet voor een
He's thinking of the whole now, I won't go to Biala,
Ja,
just the whole
als je
thing.
gewoon weer bent voor een piano, die zei gooit zo'n belaat.
Yeah. How do I look
Yeah.
going to Biala?
Ja. Ze is daar toch gegaan, en ik heb toen wie gaan we gedood, dus toen is daar ook iets met z'n meer gegaan.
After a few days, an old friend from
Man,
London
dat
came
denk
to
ik
see him.
En de hemel ging gezien, er gaat weg, dat is en ik denk van de schuld, dat is niet de carrière. Op de heen gezocht, als ik ben heftig, ja, dat denk ik, dat waardje, als ik kinder gewist de waardje bij dienst, hier
So he was on the way to, everybody told everybody where they could, they said they could find him.
His friend.
Dus ik ben ook
There was a
Friend
friend
from school.
at school, friend of his, was going to Warsaw, and he was asking about him. He went to his parents, that's where so he says he was going to Biala,
They did ask
but
him.
if you want to find out exactly where he is, this is the address to this Esther's address, and they'll tell you
So
where
she
he
was
is.
the locust.
So he came up, then he was still up there.
Yeah.
En
Yeah, no, it
er
was,
oh, heb ik gezien. De heer Weesner had geherkt van de Weesner niet. Nou, het schrik was dat je niet moest doen, en wat je toch maar zo die zit.
Yeah.
he came to tell him the message. They haven't heard from you, they're concerned. But do not come back to Lodz, they're already wearing the yellow
Those,
bands.
we had the bands like blue, white, and bands, you know, we had to wear
The blue
with a
line
sign, the Jude,
says
you know,
Jude.
Jew.
So they told him, they sent a message to him, nothing to come
Das
back.
kann eigentlich sprechen, Moment.
Du sagst, ihr wisst sein, in Oktober oder noch?
Kennen Sie?
Oktober. Das wird
Von
Tag.
39.
Das ist
Ja,
ganz
ja,
klar.
Von
alles
39. October
93.
39.
Die hast du nicht was zu tun.
Yeah, nothing to go back for.
In deine Tate, mit deiner Mama wählen, dann ist
Russland.
Nicht so much gewesen.
Ja.
Aber wo sag ich hab noch die Mama sagt, ist gewinnt wie Shepherds.
Benjamin Lefevre, his
Yeah.
mother's family,
Nee, von Breslin
all
Toss.
from Breslin.
Von Breslin Toss.
The Rosenfelds were from,
Yeah, in the
his
mother's
mother's
side.
family, Rosenfeld, was from
In-
Breslin.
In dem und ich gewinnt, eingeteilt hat, deutsche Herzen Russland. In dem und sie
According to the division, Breslin
in dem und sie
was
On the
already
Russian side.
See,
was already Russian.
they,
He had a
now-
family.
This is the Stalin-Hitler pact. The Stalin-Hitler pact.
And he and his friend and many others ran to a place like Breslin-Litovsk because they wanted to be on the Russian side. They felt more comfortable.
see, when the Germans
That's why
came
they
in,
ran.
there's a river by the name of Bug. And on the other side of Bug was Brest-Litovsk, that was the Russian territory. And on this
But
side
they
of the
above
river,
river.
that was the borderline. On the other side was already Russia,
was Russia.
and that's where he went, because he had family
And
there.
Azoyas to go up this.
And Biala was on this side. You know,
They
Biala-
had trouble crossing the river, going through checkpoints.
Just at that time, yeah.
He never went home again.
Well, you check it out.
He ran off
What's it,
and
that's high.
that's how he
That's
did.
high.
That's the story, how he went.
Oh, the banks. Oh, the banks.
Harold more dramatic than I thought. He went.
That was smuggled, you know, to smuggle to the river.
It happened that way.
Harold asked, did you have trouble getting across the river?
It's a Scotch Schwierigkeit, none of it's kind of the
Nu ja,
bus.
sie weet.
There were
Schleppers, aber das sind die vier.
there was
There are people
there were
who
guides for money. They
Er
would
was noch uns gehabt, er
And,
was nicht
and he had money with him.
This got Geld gets it.
Und gar kein bisschen Geld.
Ein bisschen.
Aber es kann sein, nicht kein
And was this gewesen auf deinem
Du sagst mit
Blink? That's all he had.
all he had to do was wearing.
And did he ever hear anything from his family again?
Not until he came back.
Das ist das letzte, was das gehört von der Familie. Mehr nicht. It was the end.
Not,
He
okay.
had as a scout to Biala, but he never came back.
En nu ben ik nog Brest-Litovsk.
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 Meer mag ik
And then, did you stay with the family in Brest?
Yeah, die
Yeah,
gaan
and,
studeren.
you stayed with the aunt.
Stayed with an aunt.
For how long?
Yeah, for how long?
Die line was gewesen bij me. A half year. Dat was gewesen ruhig.
Wat ik met de Russen?
Ja, aber ruhig. Ze nog niet, de armee is niet geweest.
Russian, Russian,
Yeah,
that
it was
was
always good. It was quiet, all quiet on the front.
This is before the
The Russian army was
the
there.
Germans and the Russians started to fight.
Dat is echt niet mooi.
En 6 Monaten ben je gevallen, ben je gegaan.
Nog 6 Monaten om de Russen gezocht. Ik heb met de Russische wieder. Wer, die alle Menschen, die op dort gewohnt haben, gelebt sind, nicht automatisch Russisch.
All the people who lived there were automatically
Before the war.
Russian. Before the war, were automatically Russian citizens.
Sind automatisch geworden.
Automatic.
Ins sind wir noch nicht gewählt.
They were not, of course,
Yeah,
like that.
Ins sind wir
They were not indigenous people.
Und die Russen gesagt, also, sie machen eine Registratie. Wer will zurückführen nach Deutschland und wer nicht, muss werden ein russischer Bürger.
If you don't want to go back to Germany,
the Russians.
the Russians said, then you have to sign in, you want to become a Russian citizen.
Either go back to Germany where you came from, or if you want to stay here.
Wenn sie so in Deutschland meinten, sie gemeint Polen.
Poland.
Then you go back to German territory. Or sign on for German citizenship.
Er will zurück nach
Was ist
Deutschland.
das
And then you have to go in the Russian army.
Russischer Bürger, Garten mit dem Mann und dann, der Russen befinden, und zurück nach der Armee.
Months afterwards, he'd like to go home again. He
No,
said,
no, 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 no,
He said,
no.
I'm not signing up.
No, I'm not signing up.
I'm not signing up, I want to
I
do.
want to take care of my parents.
Yeah,
I wanna see what's happening.
He thought that once he signed up as a Russian, he wouldn't be able to go back to his parents. He says, I don't want to sign up, I want to go back to lodge, to my parents.
Dus gemeentekens dat niet helft van de
Selbstverständlich.
Na, warte.
Das heißt, das betrifft. Du bist ein völlig schöner russischer Bürger, aber ich bin nicht
Dan, ze wollten niet gelost dat is als teruggeeft van Lodge.
Ich weiß nicht, aber so ein Besuch ein russischer Bürger, ich kann es zurückgehen.
Maar dan moet die alle zo in de vision.
Die alle so ein Besuch, sie will nicht werden kein russischer Bürger. Ich habe Besuch im Zimmer, in der Familie dort. Wir will nicht werden kein russischer Bürger. Aber die uns alle arrestiert und uns weggeschickt.
Dat is Sibir.
Der Vater.
Das ist er nicht gewusst.
Dat was een oude.
He didn't know what the outcome would be. When those who signed saying we do not wish to be Russian citizens, they rounded them up and they shipped them to Siberia. That's how he got to Siberia.
Dus ook de Russen.
That's the Russians sent him to Siberia.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out Siberia was probably the best place to be by later. That he
He
here.
didn't anticipate that he would be removed totally from circulation. I guess he thought he had to help his
Sie haben gesagt, dass die es nicht gewollt werden, russischer Bürger, das ist ein Asoi.
Yeah, if you don't want to be a citizen, you're our enemy. You're our enemy, it's our son. So they round you up.
And sent you like by train to Siberia?
By train, yeah. Op de baan, met de baan.
A camel train, huh?
Ja, ik ken dat, ik kan
A camel car.
Ja. Volgende stapelvoer, nee?
6 maanden.
And
6 weeks. By
6
by
weeks, I had a
train.
nice trip to Siberia.
Nice trip.
It was called the Orient Express.
Orient Express.
No, they just.
And did you have food? Did you have
Seid ihr gegen Essen, fragt sie? Was haben die gegen Essen? Bleit.
Ja, Leute, dat ben ik in de vriend. Dus ik weet in de Twisse, dat in lager, dat is arbeid.
Op de baan.
Auf dem Bahnhof ist es
Dat
gewesen.
moet gegeven, ja.
Ja, dat geht.
Dan je als ik brood met Wasser, aber es haben wir gewählt, aber ruhig gestellt. Mit Geschenken blieb uns jetzt gegeben, ja.
Das mir einmal gesagt, dass er in der Eis gehört die ulcers.
Da bin ich gesund geworden.
He said there he recovered from his ulcers from starvation. He didn't aggravate his ulcers.
See, that's how he got to Russia.
And
See,
that's how he
and
got
when I ran away, when I came back after that shooting in there, I came back to Lodge, and I waited until the Germans came in, and this was the beginning of September, right? And it got progressively worse.
Nog een gedanke, dat is de man. Nog een gedanke, een gewene Priest, op een gewoond van nog Litwe. Nog Litwe, nog Wilhelmina, op het hele nog bezit in mijn Arbeitsbund. En toen gedacht, dort, we kennen de Amerika, hoe maakt man contracten met ons, dat je het
I thought perhaps they go to Lithuania.
Maar dat is niet gelungen.
Wait, from Siberia to Lithuania?
No, from Brest, from Brest.
Before he went on with the Russians, signed against the
Russians.
Russians, he thought he might get to Lithuania, make decent contacts there, perhaps with Americans, families.
He didn't know that the
He didn't know that
Russians,
the Russians
took over Lithuania. He thought that Lithuania is a separate country. He'll be able to make
He
contact
didn't
with
realize
the
it was
outside
all
world.
set.
You know.
The Nazis took their part and the Russians took their part.
Aan de Duitsland besetzt Polen is het algemeen de ordnung met alles.
As soon as the Germans went to Poland, it was orderly.
Waldkilling aus Stamm, Hausgebiete. An der Russland besetzt dort ist Polen. Das andere Ding ist wie ein Atomwaffen. Was du bringst, dann bist du das Soldaten, das Soldat ausgehen.
Sloppy. The Russians were sloppy with their
Von
discipline.
Anfang an noch
Ja.
bis man erst gemerkt hat, dass die Russland jetzt verschickt alle instantly eingefahren war. So ich bin nicht.
He didn't dream this would be the outcome of this.
Maar zeer logisch in deze
But
zin.
was
Zeer
he,
gezoek dat die wil schrik, dus dat
He says their logic was
Yeah.
logical.
It's
If you want to
logical
go
point.
back, you're our
Ze zeer
enemy.
logisch in gewicht.
And we will send you to a work camp, some kind of Arbeitslager, in Siberia.
okay,
And thanks to this, you know, he's alive.
right,
Right.
Sure.
Because even in the Russian army,
He's
there
alive
was
without ulcers.
right.
That's,
So now,
So what's your?
now you're gonna tell your story.
Yeah. So when the Germans came in,
Dus ik bezwegen dat ze hier zo gedaan
oh, he has to go, he's going to smoke a cigarette to bring back more.
More memories.
so it
I know
became
what that's like.
it became
How
progressively.
often do you remember?
You know what is all
All right, now Jack doesn't
Now
need a
Jack's
cigarette.
okay.
So when the Germans came in, and it got to be very bad. We had to stay all night in front of a bakery to get a piece of bread. I'll never forget, we stood all night, even my mother, may she rest in peace, we stood the whole family in a bakery for bread. And it was near our apartment house, maybe a block away. And in the morning, the 2 German policemen came to keep order before they opened the doors. And the Polacks would go out of the line and would point to tell the Germans that you there, point to the Jews. And the Germans would go over, raus, and after standing all night long, we wouldn't get any bread. The Polacks told the Germans, who's a Jew?
What was
Yes,
Rouse mean?
Out.
Out.
Rouse. Rouse,
It got worse and worse. The Germans would come to the neighborhood, and catch all the people in the street, and most of them, of course, were Jews. The non-Jews, they would let go. The Jews, they would take forced labor to their quarters there, to clean toilets, to do the worst kind of work.
In-laws.
In-laws, yeah. This was in 1939.
This is before they liquidated together.
No, this was in
Yeah,
1939.
early, it was early on. Yeah.
Before they started
Before
again.
they
This was like in October, in November, and we decided, my brother and I, we decided that it's no good. It's no good. We had to hide out. They beat us. See, I don't know.
Je hebt het nog wel wisten wie ze nieuws gezien in het lager. En ze hebben gedeeld wisten, maar de hoogste dat de lager.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, see,
That's it.
let me
That's
have
it.
to tell hide it yet. So we decided that, and mother too. I had 3 sisters at home, and mother and nephew, and my brother-in-law was already sent away someplace to work by the Germans. I don't know where he went. So we decided that we'll run away also to Russia.
All of it.
And yeah, so first we said we'll go to Biała. And my sister Henya went with us, with me and my brother, and my older sister went with us. And we said that we'll go to Warsaw, we'll stay in Warsaw. And Henya, because we heard that there were beatings on the border to Russia, so she would go from Warsaw, she would go alone as a woman, she would go alone to investigate how the crossing is, if it's possible to go.
It should be said that Biała was en route to Russia.
Well, Biała was
Eastern
very,
Poland,
very,
it's very
very,
close.
very short from
Very
that
short distance
river,
from
board,
Brest
not far
across.
from the
In the
Russian
Bug
border.
River.
Wasn't that
Biała's-
unusual to send a woman alone to do that?
No, at that time, no. She was a young woman in her 20s, so she was supposed to go investigate. So when we left Lodz by train, a station before we came to Warsaw, a German officer went up to the train, and he picked on me and grabbed a hold of me and threw me down the train. Threw me off the train, and here the train moves on, and my sister and my brother, they go, and I'm behind. So I had to wait a day, stay there. I don't remember where I slept. I think on a station there. And the next day, the next possible train, I hopped the train and I went to Warsaw, and we met over at Estes. But so when I came to Estes, so my sister went on right away. She went on by train towards Biała. My sister went on towards Biała, and Esther didn't have enough room. Esther lived in one room, and in that room was her brother, his brother, her husband's brother, and the sister, and the 2 children. There was not enough room for me and my brother too. So we had a cousin that living there from my father's side, who lived not far from Esther. Right across there was a prison, a very famous prison in Polish history in Warsaw, Pawiak, and she lived across the street from that prison. And we talked with her, and she said it's all right, we can come and stay with her. And there was also a sister of hers from Lodz who came to live with her. And I'll never ask her about the comical thing. One evening, when we moved from Esther to this cousin, my brother was walking in front of me, and I was carrying a big thing. I had inside couple pillowcases and a couple dawn covers. You know, and I was sort of bulky thinking I was walking in the street with it. All of a sudden, 2 German officers. Halt, stehen bleiben. So one German says to me, was hast du hier? And my brother was standing aside. He sort of disowned me at that time. Was hast du hier? I didn't know German, so I said to him in Yiddish, I say, a kitchen and a Zudek, and a Zidek. Yeah, a pillow and a, you know, comforter. Comforter, yeah. So he starts squeezing and says, hast du das geklaut? Meaning in German, did you steal it? And I didn't know what that word meant. I thought when he pushed it, I thought when I squeezed it in like that, I said, yeah, So he says to me, hast du das like this? Hast du das geklaut? I said, no, that's mine. You know, no, that's mine. He made a gesture when I stole. No, that's mine. Let us go. So we stayed in with our cousin. We had some money, and we left lodge on December the 3rd. December the 3rd, we left lodge.
1939.
And then after a couple days, my sister came back from her trip to Biala.
She came to
Biala, and she told us that you can't cross the border now because the Germans, that are beating, that we can't cross.
They're standing at the
So she went back to lodge by train, and my brother and I, we stayed with that cousin there. We had some money. Everything was expensive. And I don't remember how long it took, and the money disappeared. So we had somebody, I think it was our neighbors from lodge, had some relative who had a son who looked like a German. This boy, he must have been about 18 years old. Blonde, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, didn't look like a Jew. And this boy was traveling to Germany. Nobody bothered him. And he would buy stuff from Germany like playing cards, razor blades, cigarette lighters, stuff like this. He would bring it, buy it for next to nothing in Germany. And in Warsaw, we would take it from him. I think he had other customers too. And we would sell it. We would stand in the street of Nalewkis in Warsaw. It was a Jewish street. And we'd sell it and we'd make a living.
So there was still trade going on.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
Yeah, this was already the beginning of 1940. The beginning of 1940.
So it didn't close in completely.
I'll never forget one time, and dinners we used to eat. There was a house, in one of the buildings of this on this Nalewki Street. There was a private couple. They cooked dinners. It was on the 2nd floor, and we used to go every day up there for dinner. I don't remember how much it wasn't expensive, but dinner had like some soup and maybe a little piece of meat, a lot of bread, to stuff ourselves up. I'll never forget one day we sitting there, my brother and I were sitting and eating dinner. All of a sudden, it's quiet. We take a look. There's a German officer and about 3 soldiers with him. They come in, and he says, it was a long room, and the tables were set alongside the window, a long narrow room. Alongside the window were some tables with chairs, and in the middle of the room there were some tables and chairs, and against the inside wall tables, and that's where we're sitting eating. He comes in, looks around, he says, alle Juden diese Seite. All Jews on this side. So we go over on one side, away from the window, and he says like this. Ich warte 5 Minuten und das ganze ausländische Valuta soll daher auf dem Tisch sein. Wenn nicht, they had guns, those Luger guns, you know, and pointing like this with his gun. Wenn nicht, 5 Leute werden erschossen.
I'm waiting 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I'll wait and the number so unfantastic of Nalewki Zibitsky. He says that I'm waiting 5 minutes. All foreign money should be here on the table. If not, I'll take out 5 people and they'll be shot.
It's like,
And he walks out. And they walk out. And right away, you see people all the people that were eating there, they were businessmen who were making business in the streets, All they had, so you could, if I had my head on my shoulder, I would have gotten 1 million Polish zlotys. They were taking the money, Polish money, and stuffing it under the tables, under mirrors, They were afraid, but nobody put out any dollars. About 2 minutes, about 3 minutes later, they come back, and this says, ich wiederhole, I repeat. 2 more minutes and 5 people will be shot if all the foreign money won't be on the table. And again, nobody put out.
Foreign meaning German money or?
Foreign, meaning like dollars and pounds.
Like not
Ausländische
not
Valuta. Yeah. Not German or Polish money. Ausländische. 2 minutes later, they come in, he looks and points to one man. Sie, kommen mal her. Points to one man, come here. They went in a different room, and after a little thing, we hear a shot. He comes out, and nobody put out any money, and again, Sie. And took about 3 people like this in there. Then he comes out, and he starts calling, was mijn of Polish, of Deutsch, Meister. Meister, zum Balabu is dat het Meister.
sir.
Yeah. Where's the Schlüssel? Where's the key? He wanted the key to the door. And he couldn't find the key, and he walked out, and we are all standing maybe 5 minutes. And then the owner goes to the door, look out, and they're gone. So right away we started running down the steps.
Were
We
these
wouldn't
men
step
indeed shot? Were they
Later we found out they didn't shoot him.
they fired?
They fired, They didn't. It was a private initiative. An officer
Yeah, it was not
there
must have been a lot of private
So, but we
initiatives.
stayed away already from the place. We didn't go back there. Als we een avond zie alleen met 5 zenders, dan gewoon met een game. I'll never forget. So our money, so we stayed there till it was about March. In March we saw the newspaper from Lodz, a German paper from Lodz, that they're going to close the ghetto. So I said to my brother, look, they're going to close the ghetto, we're going to be here, I want to go back. No, my mother, my sisters, they were without a man. I said, what will we here? My brother didn't want to go back, but I said, I'm going back. I'm going back.
You were in Varsha, but you wanted to return.
We couldn't go to Russia, and so I decided to go back, and of course he went back. And
What did it mean to close the ghetto?
They were going to seal off
they're going
the
to
ghetto.
they put the Jews in the ghetto and close it with,
Created the ghetto.
They created the
They
ghetto.
created the ghetto.
What was the ghetto? The ghetto, dat was zo'n in März, So like in March, and they decided they're going to close the ghetto. So we had to smuggle, because they declared already the German Reich, that part of Germany. So we had already to smuggle, illegally, so to speak, to get into the ghetto. So, no. This wasn't the ghetto yet. We came in to Lodz. We had to, the Germans shouldn't catch us. And we also lived on the same street.
Sie haben gemisst noch Warsche, ungefähr, wenn ich von der Weg komme, soll gemischt schon sein, September, Mitte Oktober, Ende Oktober.
En ik ben weg am 3. Dezember.
Ende Oktober. In der Warsche bin ich geblieben ungefähr, da ist die
11 days in jail.
in November. Bis November.
I'm on it.
Nee,
Nicht am Monat, nicht am Monat.
in November bin ich noch weg.
En hier nog.
Nicht nach Russland, nicht nach Russland.
Noch der
Noch
Rest of us.
En hier ben geweest van 3. December, ben ik geweest bis März. From 3rd of December till March, we were still in Warsaw. And then when we came back to Lodz,
אמר שכן שי קבליטה. Aber ich würde von dem Geld verlassen. Und dann hat kein Ding für seine Fans, mit seinen
His father had a notion that Gallop worked out. He could load up the wagons and horses from his business.
Die wijst en daar was voor aan daar hadden als voorspelling bij het bestuur, bij de film. Wat Duitsland besiegt, wat Duitsland besiegt, zoveel geld.
Well, get through Jack.
Als spannend is twee maanden. Als spannend bij die feest.
Another time?
When we first hotel is what the camp was like in the Soviet.
So maybe we should plan another time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll move to
Let Jack finish a little and then we'll do more tomorrow.
All right.
So we came back to Lodge, and we still lived on the same street. As a matter of fact, they lived number 35. Then when, you know, this was an outside street, so then was 39, 37, 39, we lived 41. And his brother lived 43. So we lived on the same street with 3 houses separating us. So we came back to our home, and we had to already, after a few days, we had to start moving to the ghetto. There was still snow on the ground, I remember.
To move.
So we built some kind of like a little sled, and we put it on the stuff on the sled, and we would pull it towards the ghetto. They took what was the ghetto? They took the slum area of Lodge, like in Denver, 5 Points. Yeah, they took the slum area of Lodge. And all the Polacks, all the non-Jews who lived there, had to leave, and the Jews from outside that area had to. So they went into our apartment, and we had to go. So my mother had a cousin, Cepelinska, Liebe. No, an M, Cepelinski. Sein Schwester, dat gaat 2 Schwestern mit der Brüder Lodge. Goldie had 2 uncles. And an aunt. And no, 2 aunts and an uncle. Her father's brother and 2 sisters in Lodge. So one of the sisters lived in that part of town where the ghetto was supposed to be. She was alone with her husband, and she had on the 5th floor, she had 2 rooms. So she offered us 1 room.
So you were able to move in.
So we moved into one room, 8 people. We moved in a narrow room, narrower than this. It was about from this wall to the door, and about this length. 8 people. And it was the end of the building. It's a 5-story. Winter time, the snow was built up on the wall, the outside wall. There was no heat, so the snow, the wall was covered. So we had to move like this. We moved to the ghetto this way, and this is how we got into the ghetto. And then in May.
Did you have food?
Well, in the beginning, before right away, when they locked the ghetto, so they created like a small Jewish country.
The rules were
We
different.
couldn't use. They created Jewish money. As a matter of fact, I have it home. I have a bank. I have some, you know. Jewish money, the Jewish post office, Jewish fire department, Jewish police, everything's Jewish. They cut off, we had no contact with the outside of the ghetto. Warsaw was different. See, Warsaw was different. Warsaw still had, to the underground sewer lines, they had contact with the outside world.
Lodge was cut off.
We were cut off from the world. We didn't know what was going on. And before, wait a minute, when the Germans came in, this was before we still ran away, must have been sometimes in October. Everybody who had a radio had to turn it in.
So there'd be no contact.
If not, if they said if they'll find somebody after that day with a radio, he'll be shot. And they shot plenty of Jews who didn't give back the radios. Die is nog geweest in de Duitse Umkreis? No. In de Duitse Umkreis ook in de radios? No. He was niet geweest.
He was gone.
Yeah, he was gone already.
Can we make another day?
I remember I remember we had a radio, a big, you know, the old fashioned radio.
Aber gering als ik is die mooie
Just
Yes.
I'll turn this off. You can.
gegangen auf die Gasse und gekickt, wie man so frisch.
You would like to vanish when you saw him walking.
He said he couldn't imagine the fear again, because Terry didn't get that.
He said that you could not imagine the fear that had just seen, you know.
The sight of a German
The
soldier,
sight of
we were
German
great.
soldiers.
Dus
It was terrifying.
Zo wie ein
Its size, its authority, everything else, its armaments. You hope they wouldn't.
When they were
notice.
walking the street, we had to get off the sidewalk.
There are things we don't think about that are so painful.
You know,
such as
you
our children.
can't, you know, you can't explain
It is so dreadful.
our feelings. You can't explain, you know, like I was
It's an
telling,
it's an
yeah, like was
attitude.
like in the concentration camp later on. Yeah, who get like we
Happened
in the
in
ghetto we
Dresden.
were joking. We joked that God converted. He became a German. He abandoned us. He became a German. You know. And who can explain, you know, the hopelessness, getting up in the morning, putting back on the lice-infested jacket, you know, we didn't, they gave us an Auschwitz before they sent us to the work camp. They gave us underwear made out of paper. And the paper was crinkled paper, such crinkled, where the lice could, you know, sit in those. So what we used, when we used to go to the toilet, of course there was no toilet, we used to cut off a piece of
Use
paper. Underwear we use as toilet paper until we use it all up, you know, dirty, you know, that's what we, and then we used to put, all we had a pair of pants with the striped pants and jacket, and this was lice infested. And then the epidemic of typhus broke out, you know. Who can explain? We you know, we had to get up in the morning, it was still raining or snowing, get up and wear those wet things, the lice were eating us alive. And so we were, you know, praying, if there's a God, we shouldn't get up in the morning, that's enough.
Yeah,
Because there's no
that's
hope, there was no hope. You know, everything was so hopeless. It worked and worked and worked. And if you didn't produce so much, you know, they didn't give you that water, you know, with some cabbage floating around. This was our lunch, you know. So that's what they gave us. And then at one time we didn't have anything. Later, one time we got bread. You know, those were those square loaves that the Germans were, you know, the German army was eating. And that bread was all green, all moldy. And that bread we got. I look at this, how am I going to
I
eat
must
it?
leave
So I took a little bit,
Sorry.
so I took a little bit of water. So I thought I'll throw the bread in the water, all that mold will come to the top, I'll swim it off, and I eat the rest of it. Boy, it looked like garbage, like sewer thing. I had to throw it away because I couldn't eat it. So next day when we got another piece of bread, so we ate it with a thing. The dust was coming out. We were eating the dust of the mold was coming out. We ate it. And then this one, we didn't have this. So the Germans, for themselves, you know, because there were German workers that led our thing. I had a German who helped me in there. A German from Munich, from his town, that I found after the war. He helped me. So for the Germans, they brought in some potatoes for the German kitchens, and they put them in the ground for the winter, so they won't freeze. But they picked a bad terrain, it was a damp terrain, wet, and all the potatoes, they got rotten there. So the way in the morning, wintertime was so dark, when we went, we knew where it was. So you would run and dig little by little a hole, and finally we would get into those potatoes. You put in like an oven, they were fermenting. We would take out, and I remember, I'll never forget talking about humor. One of the guys filled up a cement bag, you know, an empty cement bag, filled it up with those rotten potatoes. And when we got to the place we got to work, before the Germans arrived, so he hid it in a place not far from a German engineer at his table with the plans on it. And later, I'll never forget it, this German was walking around back and forth. What stinkt da? Yeah, fine, stinkt da here. What stinks here? Because it was rotten, it was stinking like hell. And he didn't know what stinks in that place where he was sitting. And then later, when we were about to go home, this German from far noticed that this guy was pulling out that sack he started running up to me. If he had a gun, see those Germans, they didn't carry guns this way. They like CBs, you know, construction battalions. If he had a gun, he would have shot him. Oh, and he dropped it in the end. So we used to get those potatoes. There was winter time, and our barracks in the camp were in the ground. Just the gable, the roof, was sticking out, and that thing was covered with green, with grass. So from the airplanes, they wouldn't see that that's a camp. So there was under the gables, we slept right under the gables on straw, full of course, lice infested. We had a blanket to cover us, a thin blanket. And there was a walkway right directly under the ridge, you know. So winter time, they let us take in a little stove. So we would take those potatoes, they were so rotten that when you pulled it, the skin, it would just peel off. And then we would squash it and lay it on top of that stove. Right away, it would become, all that starch would become white, and it was stinking like hell. At that time, we didn't get any bread. So I remember one Sunday we had...
You would then eat the potatoes?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And how would it be? And see, we went to camp together with Lithuanian Jews. We were 150 Jews from Lodz and 500 Lithuanian Jews. When we came to that working camp, they were there already, and they took the best working spots they took. And we had the worst ones, you know, real hard labor. And then they came, I don't remember from where, but they came like this. They were so strong. What they could do, two of them, we had to have from the ghetto, we came from the ghetto lodge, the skeletons. We had to have 10 guys to pick up what two of them could pick up. So they didn't believe that we couldn't do it. They said that we are, you know, pretending that we don't want to work. And the Germans, because of them, the Germans started killing us. And I remember they were throwing out of the kitchen potato peels, this big. In the ghetto, I'll never forget, my mother received a prescription from the doctor for 1 kilogram of potato peels. I remember I went to the kitchen with this prescription, and they gave me 1 kilogram potato peels. And I'll never forget, I woke up in the middle of the night, a little lamp was burning in our apartment in the ghetto, in that one room, and Mother was sitting there and peeling those peelings. She was cleaning those peelings up. So I said to Mother, I said, Mom, why are you sitting there going to sleep? Kijk,
Mom showed the thing of a recept from a doctor, a kilogram in the ghetto.
So when we saw that they were throwing out such potato peels, we wanted to take it and cook it and eat it, yeah? They wouldn't let us. Pelen said ribkes, you know. Zarazes, you started calling us names. That we will bring in all kind of diseases, you know, by eating that stuff, we'll bring in all kind of diseases. But later, when things got real bad, and they started already to starve too, so they started eating those potatoes too. And the Litwakers, they don't say stink. They say herzach. You can listen, you know. They said different. So they said, it's herzach hamayachel. It stinks, it's a pleasure. So I remember one Sunday, every second Sunday we had off from work. So I remember the camp director, the German, who came to our back. He came over, and he wanted to walk in, but he went back from that stench, from those potatoes. So yes, what are we doing? How we are doing it? So we said, we do this. So he says, yeah, ohne Salz, without salt. Yeah. So I said, so this is the German, you know. So I said, we don't have any salt. So he says, go to the kitchen and tell them that I said to give you salt. So we had put a little bit of salt on those stinking potatoes. But it was delicious, you know, we didn't have anything else.
But eerst is dat vol de knop, of gelijk nog heilig. Misschien het kan met de komen aan. Kind zit op de laag, dus dat is misschien gaat zo de hier zo maar. Dus het lijkt het wel, maar zo de ohne Salz.
Yeah, good point.
Ja, ja. Jetzt kriegt sie, you know, but, you know, it's just unbelievable.
Drugi, to by więc wissen, wie sie gewinnt. Der russische Lager,
Ja.
also lesen den Gulag von Solzhenitsyn, der Zaristen.
Oh, did you read the book,
Yeah.
Gulag by
Yeah, Solzhenitsyn.
Solzhenitsyn?
If you just, you
He'll describe what was in those
this is
camps. He was
original.
one of those camps
This is
in
original.
Siberia.
This is
Yeah.
original. I don't